Hey campers, welcome to the day 2 of the gardening school group. Today we're going to be making seed bombs. So what you want to look at are these little pods here. It's construction paper with some seeds on the inside. And they can grow cute little flower plants that we can plant later in a flower pot or in a garden. So that's what we're going to make today. So the first thing you need is a piece of construction paper. And the color doesn't matter, it's whatever color you want. If you see here, I did 6 of my favorite colors, rainbow colors, but this is what we're going to use. I'm going to use blue right now. So what you're going to do is you're going to start by cutting it up into strips. Make sure your strips are no more than 1 inch wide. Once you have your strips, and they don't have to be perfect, you can take maybe 2 or 3 at a time and start cutting them into little squares or rectangles. Again, no more than 1 inch wide. Once you have all your pieces cut up, just make sure you get them all into your little dish. This is just an old applesauce container that I rinsed out. So once you have all your pieces in your little bowl, you're going to soak them with water for 20 minutes. So I'm going to use the watering can we made yesterday. I'm just going to fill it up with water. So just kind of push it down, make sure that all the pieces are submerged in your water, and we're going to sit that aside for 20 minutes. But I did have one sitting and soaking for 20 minutes, so we can keep going. I use orange for this one. So my paper has been sitting and soaking for 20 minutes. It's pretty wet right now. So it's ready for the next step. So for this next part, you need a food processor or a blender or a magic bullet or whatever you guys have to either chop up food in tiny pieces or to make a smoothie. I've tried it with both the magic bullet and my food processor, and both work perfectly fine, so it's whatever you want to use. And this is where I need you to have your parents' supervision to help you out, okay? Because these can be very sharp and you just want your parents to be there to help you out. So I'm going to take my little pieces of paper, and I'm going to sprinkle them on the inside of my food processor with the blade already inside. Just try to get it as evenly around. And it's okay that they're still wet. You're probably going to have to add some water. This is especially true if you're going to use a blender or a magic bullet, because they need a lot of liquid to make sure that the motor doesn't burn out. And the food processor needs a little bit in there. So we're going to add the water that's in the cup with the paper, and then I might have to add a little bit more. We'll see. You can always see if it works when you push the start button, and if it sounds like it's not really doing anything, you can scrape down the sides and add a little bit more water, because we will have the opportunity to drain it out later. So I'm going to pour this water in here. Alright, we'll see if this is enough. So now I'm going to start my food processor and start grinding up my paper. And like I said, I might have to stop and add more water as we go along. Okay, so I'm noticing that my paper is kind of sticking to the sides of my food processor. So I'm going to take this long metal spoon, I'm going to scrape it down a little bit. And again, you might have to do this a few times too. Let me check this again. I think I'm going to add a little bit more water, and I'm going to keep blending. So that looks pretty good. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take this little strainer in my plastic bowl, and we're going to try to get at least some of the water out of our paper pulp, because we don't want it to be too mushy at first. Make sure you have your parents help you with the blades because they're very sharp. So you see I have my paper pulp here. There's still a few chunks of paper that you can tell it's paper, and that's perfectly fine. If I would have used a magic bullet or a blender, it probably would have gotten a little bit more finely ground, and that's fine too. So I'm going to just sit it in this strainer so it can drain out a little bit. I want to leave some of the moisture in because we got to be able to form it into a ball once we add some seeds. So I'm just going to start putting it in here. So try to get as much of your paper out as possible. You can put some off the lid too. Just kind of want to get a little bit of that water out of there. Squeeze it a little bit, not too much. We can always squeeze it more later. We can also add more water later if you accidentally squeeze it out too much. Okay. I have this right here in my hand. I'm going to try to mush it around a little bit, trying to kind of sort of form it into a shape of a ball, but not quite finish it yet because we got to add the most important part, and that's the seeds. So the seeds that I'm going to be using today are marigold seeds. So these are actually left over from last season. My mom saved the buds off of all the marigolds, but you can also find these at the store in your gardening section. So I'm just going to open up one of these little seed pods and sprinkle some seeds in here. I don't exactly know how many to tell you, just a nice little pinch, because it's very well possible that not all of them are going to sprout, so it's nice to have a decent amount in here. Okay. So that might be like anywhere from like 10 to 20 seeds. Just use your best judgment. So now we're going to try to mix it around a little bit and make sure the seeds are kind of evenly spread throughout here. And it's okay if some fall into your dish. You can just pick them up later. It's kind of messy, but we're going to form a ball as best as we can. And we want to try to keep at least some of the seeds towards the top, whatever will be the top on your tray, because that way, as the sunlight starts to help the seeds germinate, which means that they're going to start sprouting, then they can at least get some sunlight and they can kind of poke through the paper here, and then you'll see they'll start to grow. So you don't want to squeeze it out too much, just try to make sure it's not sopping wet. Just kind of using my hands at this point. And I have my little seed pod ball. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the sheet tray along with my other ones and let it dry overnight before I do anything with it. Now, you don't want to really let this get completely dry, because now that we've started making the seeds wet, it'll start the germination process. So as you can see, I kept these nice and watered, and I kept them by a windowsill, and they started to sprout. Now you can plant these pretty much right away after they've sat out for one night, but I wanted to be able to show you that they actually poke through the paper pulp, so that's why I let these out and I've been watering them. So I'll probably plant them after this video. But the nice thing about marigold seeds is they usually sprout between like 3 to 5 days when they start sprouting up, that you can see them. So it'll be really easy to tell if your seed bombs have worked, and if not, you know, no big deal, just try again. And these have been planted, I guess, for a week or two, so some of them are pretty high now, but they'll get even bigger, and then they'll start to bloom. So I like marigolds because they bloom really fast, and then you can see the fruits of your labor fairly early. But yeah, so here's our seed bombs. So enjoy making these with your parents.